You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast. It has been a long summer without it. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and delighted to welcome Mark O'Hare. You may see that Adrian Clark isn't with us, but rest assured he'll be back for the start of the Premier League season. But we wanted to get basically an outright podcast out to you, something to get your teeth stuck into ahead of what's going to be a pretty busy season on all fronts. And Mark, give the listeners a bit of background to your summer. You've been away from us for a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to be back, isn't it? But yeah, it was a long old summer last year, a long old season, I should say, with the Euros and then obviously the extended Champions League format on top of the usual commitments. And yeah, I wouldn't lie, I was kind of running on fumes a little bit in sort of March, April time. So yeah, the wife was Australian, so in the non-major tournament summers, we tried to get out there. So I was out in Australia for about 8 weeks or so. Got a nice break from sort of watching football as intensely as I normally would do. Feel quite nicely refreshed and ready to go. Done all my pre-season prep. Quite happy with my views, opinions. Obviously, a lot can change between now and the end of August when the window shuts. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with where I am right now, and yeah, eager for things to get going again. It's going to be another very intense 12 months, obviously, sort of culminating in a World Cup year. So a lot to be excited about. And yeah, I'm not sure about you, Dan, but I'm very much ready to go.
Yeah, I'm a bit like you. I know you guys cover football intently, but I was really glad of the break. And I struggled to get into all the football that was on throughout the summer because I just wanted to completely decompress, follow other sports. But I think the appetite now for coming back to the football season is as big as it's ever been because it had football. There was so much football on TV throughout over the last pretty much since COVID. So it's been a long 4-year stretch. And yeah, just getting a little bit mundane, just the fact everything was done in the Premier League. But we're pretty eager to get going and I'm looking forward to it, mate. But Mark will be alongside us throughout the season. Really excited about that. And also Adrian Clark. And we want to hear from you. So leave a comment on what you'd like to see from this season in terms of betting topics to cover, in terms of what games to cover, and basically anything you want or any questions for the guys, Mark and Adrian. Do leave a comment on the video here. We will be back with the live streams next Wednesday week, that is, ahead of the Premier League season. But before we get going, I do want to point you in the direction of our Pod 50 offer. That's POD50. Enter the bonus code Pod 50. You get £50 worth in free bets when you bet £50. Now, this offer is now exclusive to podcast listeners, so it's the best offer you can currently get with Matchbook. So enter that bonus code Pod50. Full T's and C's available on the screen there. And also point you direction of a special outright one. So we're about to cover the Premier League outright here. If you bet £20 on the outright of the Premier League season and enter the bonus code Champions, you get a £3 free bet every time they win a game. So Liverpool won 25 games last season. That is effectively £75 in free bets. So full T's and C's available on the website there as well. But we'll start by looking at the Premier League outright and take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. And Mark, look, I'll be honest, it's one of those markets that, yeah, it's probably as tight as title races we've had to cover. I mean, it's Man City and maybe Arsenal have battled it out at least at the start of the season. I know Liverpool were like 4 or 5 to 1 at the start of the season, but currently you can get Liverpool at 282. Big move on that in the last week or so based on the Isaac news. Arsenal 3.5, City 4.8, and you even have Chelsea there 12.5. So take away in that top three, maybe starting with Liverpool, and they're strengthened their squad big time this summer.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fascinating market, a fascinating title race this season. I can't remember the last time we had a 3-pronged title race. So let's hope it plays out the way that the market expects, really, and we get that sort of race towards the end of April and May to, as you said at the start there, the excitement kind of ran out of the Premier League towards the end of last season with the Premier League title race done, the relegation race done. It was only really the European race that kind of kept us excited. But yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating and kind of straight off the bat, I say I've got views and opinions. This is probably the one I'm weakest on. If you do have a strong view, absolutely get stuck in. But for me, it's very difficult to. I can sort of be pro and against all three teams, and Liverpool are the fair favourites, so don't disagree with their position in the market at all. Kind of one of my shrewd friends and a few friends, we spoke in May. We were sort of just trying to decide who would be favourites on the opening show of the outrights when they came up, and I did expect it to be Liverpool based on their body of work, but their business over the summer has been very eye-catching, especially if they do get Isak over the line, as it seems they will. Florian Wirtz will tear this league apart if he adjusts. Frimpong is a really exciting right back or right wing back, if you like. Kirkaz has a tremendous season. Robertson probably didn't reach his own heights last season, so a potential upgrade there as well. Up front is probably a question mark for me. Obviously, Diogo Jota, God rest his soul, a big loss. I also think Hugo Ekitike for Luis Diaz isn't necessarily an upgrade. If anything, you're sort of standing still a little bit there, possibly a downgrade. It's a bit of a gamble, in my opinion. Gakpo can blow hot and cold. Salah will be missing for a period for AFCON as well. So, but still, they've got enough firepower there to defend the title, which they haven't done now since 1984. And I guess the big question mark for me is they escaped major injuries last year where their rivals did suffer. That's something to bear in mind. They'll do well to avoid the same sort of luck this time around. But they didn't lose 2 league games before the title was confirmed. They were the strongest team. They have got a progressive squad. No obvious weakness. Fair favourites, in my opinion.
Okay, worthy favourites according to Mark 282, but the price is the price, so we'll go elsewhere. Maybe before Arsenal, Mark, cover Manchester City, because there's 2 ways this can go. I feel that price is probably not the right price in some ways. If they're back to their best, they're probably tied close to favoritism with Liverpool, and if they're not, they're maybe closer to Chelsea. It's one of those prices that potentially can tempt you back in if you trust Pep Guardiola and his rebuilding abilities.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm sort of looking at that price right now and going, why am I not backing it? But for me, they are the hardest team to place right now, because you have to question whether last season was a blip or whether it was the beginning of the end, really. It felt more like the latter. But they've done some really good business, I think, in January and again this summer as well. Ryan Cherki will be really exciting. I know he should cover that left-back problem. Reinders, a real technician who can fill that central midfield void. Rodri's back. Haaland fit and available from the off. But they did finish 13 points off the title. They won just once and lost 6 times on the travels at top half teams. And yeah, surprisingly, I looked at it. They earned the most points in the second half of last season. So you could say they were over their blip. But Liverpool did ease off. Arsenal had their injury problems. And I guess results kind of masked the performances more often than not. And we saw again in the FA Cup final against Crystal Palace, they're not the same side of old, or they weren't at least. And I think the biggest issue to consider is the FFP breaches. This time 12 months ago, it was on everyone's lips, sort of talking about them in the previews, the points deductions that could or may come, and they still haven't arrived yet, and that has to be sorted at some point. And that's the cloud that I sort of can't get over really when backing Man City is, if that does hit, whether it's 3 points, 6 points, 9 points, it could be enough to send them out of the title race. So without sort of knowing where we are there, I can't sort of back them with confidence.
Yeah, I was watching a preview and it wasn't mentioned at all. And I was actually very surprised by that, because we don't live in a vacuum without those charges. I mean, the points deduction comes in, you're losing your money.
Exactly. Like it's, as I say, like 12 months ago, every preview you read was Man City. These charges were being levelled at them. They could be getting a points penalty. They could get relegated. I knew people backing them for relegation in the last 2 seasons because of it. So why are they've not suddenly just gone away? That something has to happen there at some point soon. And my guess is they will get a points penalty. And that for me would rule them out of a title bet.
Okay, fascinating how that goes. It's going to get very messy, I'd say, over the coming months with that. Surely there'll be a decision made by the end of the season. Let's move on to now. It's important to stress throughout the season, Mark and Adrian will be putting up bets and selections. This one is more of a lean, Mark, but if you had to have a bet at the current prices, you do feel slight bit of value with Arsenal at 3.5, which is 5-2. What is tilting you towards the edge? Good summer, they're due, a bit of everything, or?
They are due, aren't they? What was it? Bridesmaids 3 years in a row now.
Overdue, mate.
I think they've got the raw materials to be a title winner. Outstanding defence. We've seen that not just last season, but the year before. They only actually lost 4 league games last year. They did run PSG closer than anyone else in the Champions League from the Premier League. And what went wrong? Well, injuries, ill discipline, a lack of cutting edge in attack. A very poor record defending set pieces, probably over-reliant on themselves, on their ability from the dead ball situations too. But ill-discipline, that can be improved. Injuries, that's often down to a bit of luck, really. They escaped it 2 seasons ago around Man City, incredibly close. Liverpool escaped them last year, so a bit more balance there will help. They could be a bit more fluid on the ball, of course, but Gyökeres will help. A fit Havertz will help. A fit Saka will definitely help. And I think Zubimendi is a nice addition to that midfield. Ødegaard probably needs to re-find his best levels. But now you've got cover for Saka if he does be injured with Madueke. Expecting more from Lewis Skelly and Wanyeri, who've had breakout seasons in the squad. So I think there's a lot to like about them. I think there is room for improvement. Their record against the traditional Big Six is remarkably strong, actually, compared to the Arsenal of old. And their struggles actually came when sort of putting away teams outside of the bottom six and outside of the Big Six, really. And only Everton drew more games. So turn a few of those draws into wins, ideally with an actual striker leading your line, and you shouldn't be sort of reaching too hard to find a team who can find enough improvement to go very, very close. One slight concern, obviously you have to play all the same teams twice throughout the whole season, but Arsenal do have a very difficult start, don't they? So was it United, Liverpool, Newcastle away, City home, all in their first 7 games, and that is a little bit off-putting. If you make a slow start, it could be difficult to sort of recoup those points this season.
Yeah, I'm fascinated, just before we move on from Arsenal, how they go about the set piece route, because defensively very strong, obviously, but I think they went way too far with it. I mean, the PSG game, you can't explain Thomas Partey taking long throw-ins, and how was he trying to make a statement to the board like in a Champions League semi-final? I just couldn't get my head around that. And I think
the best reference I heard someone say or compare Arsenal, saying in that PSG game, are Arsenal trying to be Stoke City with Rory Delap here? Because it's almost like they changed their whole philosophy to be based on set pieces, and that was the way to beat PSG. So they have to find the balance, because two seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, they were great fun, really exciting, entertaining, and often picked up points too. So they have to find that balance.
And I did find Arsenal struggling to break teams down last 20 minutes, where I'm looking at Arteta going, what is the idea here? We need a plan B. So yeah, I definitely have my doubts for sure. But look, it's a lean from Mark.
Huge season for Arteta, right?
Massive season. I mean, I was keeping the wolves from the door last season, saying he deserves all the time. But I think this season we need to deliver something, just speaking candidly there. So lean Arsenal. We will get Adrian's thoughts, don't worry, of the outrights before we kick off Wednesday week. That is, so mark that in your calendar. That'll be a live stream available on the Matchbook YouTube channel. And before we move on from outrights, a reminder, the new customer offer. Obviously you have that pod 15, will point you in the direction there. But if you do want to check out Matchbook Betting Exchange for the first time, if you bet £20 on the outright of the Premier League and join with the bonus code champions, that's champions, bet £20 on the outright of the Premier League on any team you want, you get a £3 free bet every time they win a game. And a reminder, Liverpool won 25 games last season despite taking their foot off the pedal. That's effectively £75 in free bets. Definitely our best offer yet when it comes to the outrights. And purposely didn't touch on Chelsea there, but I know you're a fan of them, Mark. Obviously not maybe to break into that top 3, but Premier League top 4. So I say that in a betting sense rather than a fan yourself, obviously being a QPR fan.
Yeah, Chelsea have been the big sort of movers over the summer, really. Flavour of the month after the Club World Cup, really. And they went into the summer as a 20-1 shot for the league title, 5th favourites behind Liverpool, Arsenal, City and Newcastle. But they've been kind of propelled up the market following those Club World Cup exploits. And probably some interesting, exciting business, which should rectify their issues in the final third. It was at times when they were sort of struggling for a central striker, despite having all these attacking players available to them. And, Delap, Gittins, João Pedro, Esteval, Xavi Simons, we hear now as well. You can't really be misfiring with that sort of bunch alongside Cole Palmer. And if the midfield 3 can stay fit, Caicedo, Enzo, Lavia, that's very exciting and very got the potential to go very, very well. But where they fall back down for me is at centre half, where I don't think there's a real dominant defender there, and obviously goalkeeper too, where if Robert Sanchez is still your number 1, then you're in trouble. But I'm not still bought into Maresca. I don't think Chelsea fans are either. But his preferred style, I don't think suits what is a young, expressive, ambitious squad. Chelsea at their best were sort of more off the cuff than his more sort of pragmatic possession style. And also, you've just been to America, played 7 games in the summer, where most of the Premier League rivals have been having a bit of a breather and a break. And I do think that's something to bear in mind, as is the fact they're in the Champions League now this season. They were able to play the reserves week in, week out in the Conference League and still be successful. They can't do that in the Champions League. So there are challenges to overcome. But I do think they are the most likely to take the final top 4 berth compared to the rest of the teams in that sort of chasing pack.
Yeah, so that you gave us a lot of reasons not to back Chelsea yet. You just probably think they're far clear. So I'm guessing from you, there's a top 3 for you in any order. There's Chelsea, and then there's a massive gap, or a big enough gap for Chelsea to overcome those couple of challenges, because America and Champions League football this season are 2 big challenges in my opinion.
Yeah, they are, but I think other teams have those same challenges too. Newcastle, for example, we saw them drop off quite a fair amount when they played in the Champions League a couple of seasons ago. Isak's sale, if that does go through, that's a concern. They've not strengthened really. They've almost sat still a little bit as well. And so that's something to bear in mind with Newcastle, something that would put me off ready for them. Spurs, obviously finishing 17th last season. Yeah, I'm not expecting miracles from Thomas Frank either. I'm actually quite sceptical about that appointment. I thought Iraola would have been the more obvious replacement there in terms of style, approach. Thomas Frank is adaptable, much more so than probably Ange and Iraola, but he was also more pragmatic. And personally, I just wouldn't be taking coaches or managers from Brentford or Brighton. What you want to do there is almost bring the club process and everything that goes with it with you, rather than just the coach, who just seems to be the figurehead. We've seen that with Brighton, just rotating head coaches and still being as successful. So I'm fascinated to see how it goes, but I don't expect them to suddenly turn into a top 4 material overnight. And defence needs a lot of work too, as does their injury record. And then for Villa, again, a bit like Newcastle, really. I did like them at the start of the summer, but I've cooled on them a fair bit, actually. They look a bit weaker than they were in May. Missed out on the top 5 on goal difference, no Champions League. Should be a positive, but then you've got Unai Emery as a head coach who loves the Europa League anyway. So that could easily be one of their pre-season targets, to try and get back into the Champions League via the Europa League. And there's doubts over Martinez's future. You're also missing Rashford, Asensio, Disasi, loan players who provided a big boost in January. Constant speculation about Ollie Watkins as well. Their away form wasn't great, and I was quite surprised actually that no top half team scored fewer goals than Aston Villa last season. Didn't kind of fit what I had in my head of a quite attacking, free scoring side. So yeah, there's a doubts over all the sides, I think, and probably Chelsea, just the squad strength and size probably, just kind of nudges them ahead of the rest.
1.6, 1.7. Mark feels Chelsea are worthy favourites in that top 4. Before we move on from the top 4, so we've covered Newcastle, you've doubts on them. We've covered Spurs, doubts on them, and Villa too. But there is a team priced very close to Newcastle United in Manchester United. Would you press the lay button at 5.2 that they don't finish top 4 this season? Because that's what's available on Matchbook right now.
More likely to do that than back it, but I am fascinated by this because I was a believer in Ruben Amorim when he was appointed. The results, performances worsened after his appointment. They only won 27 points from 27 games. Losing the Europa League final to Spurs was just the sort of cherry on the cake of embarrassment, really. But, a lack of goals, a lack of firepower was a big issue. They failed to score 15 times in the Premier League. Only Southampton and Leicester had a worse record than that. But they've worked to try and address those with Cunha and Buemo, possibly Sesko as well. They do need that spearhead. But I think it's worth noting too that Cunha and Buemo were 2 of the very biggest outperformers of their underlying metrics last season. They overperformed, and I think they've overpaid and overspent on both of them. I wonder whether they do have decent enough options elsewhere in Garnacho and Ahmad still at the club. They're obviously looking to sell Garnacho by the sounds of it, but they do need that central striker. The big plus is no European football, and there is a direct correlation between teams showing big improvements when they've not been playing in Europe. You see Newcastle last year, you see Chelsea too, obviously barely played a first teamer in the Conference League. So I do expect improvement. Top 4 probably looks a little bit more fanciful than you sort of hope for a club of their stature at this stage of the season. But I still harbour a few hopes that Ruben Amorim can be as good as I hoped he would be, because a good Man United is good for the Premier League, I think.
Okay, yeah. So we'll move on that. I'm fascinated how that project goes. Yeah, and pre-season results going okay so far, at least performances. But we'll touch on a couple of teams we didn't cover in the top 4 market, Mark, but you have your sights in the top 6. It's just the way we've set it up at Matchbook. We've top 4, top 6. Obviously, likely that 5th place will once again go to an English team for the Champions League, but we'll wait and see. But if you're betting in the top 6 market on Matchbook, Mark, you've picked out 2 teams, and 2 teams we haven't spoken about yet, in Brighton and Bournemouth. Talk to us a little bit about the thinking here. You think both are worth a bet in this market?
Yeah, I just think they're decent prices. I think Brighton have got top 6 material about them. As we're talking, there is speculation about Van Heck's future, which would be a concern. He's their best centre-half, and he's hugely progressive in the last couple of years. But with Brighton, you've got to trust them, but there is always a succession plan in place. he might weaken them a little bit, but as we saw last year with a lot of changeover, they're still capable of sort of punching way above their weight into the top half. And no European football is a significant advantage. They only missed out on the Europa League by one place last season anyhow. And considering the squad turnover last summer, they did a lot of business in and out. Also a rookie coach in his first campaign, very young guy. It was a bit of a transitional year, and they still managed their second best top flight finish. And I do think there's room for improvement in what is quite a young squad. Just the 8 clean sheets, worst defence in the top 14. Need improvements there, but only 4 sides scored more goals than they, and their data was largely impressive too. Where can they improve? Well, they failed to beat a relegated team at home. That should, in theory, be rectifiable. And they only lost 9 times overall in the Premier League, same as Man City. So despite being unable to field an unchanged side at any point in the season because of injuries and issues, that bit them quite hard actually at times. So there was a lack of consistency, but I think Hutzler and his team will have learnt a lot. So I do think there's areas for improvement. I don't think that's been reflected in the general market. The assumption is because last year we had a lot of big boys struggling and suffering, it won't happen this time around. And I don't think that's the case. When you're playing in Europe, especially the Champions League, when there's more games now than ever, there is going to be an opportunity for a team outside of the big pack to potentially swoop in. And Brighton at a nice price would be one of the sides I'd be monitoring.
Okay, and secondly, it's to Bournemouth. I'm interested just on staking plan here, Mark. So Brighton in around 5, 6.0, Bournemouth in around 9, 10.0, 11.0. Betting both in these top 6 market, would you go 60? Would you go for those same returns, for example, with those 2 bets if you're splitting your stakes, or what would you do?
Probably 60-40 in Brighton's favour. For Bournemouth, again, no European football is a big advantage. This is the team now who have achieved a club record points haul in 2 successive seasons under Iraola. Their joint best league finished last season, most wins in a top flight season. It's easy to forget they were 5th in February before tailing off with just 3 wins in their final 13 games. I think a lot of that is down to their sort of energetic and aggressive style. Injuries also hit them quite hard as well. Yes, they've lost Howson and Kirkes, 2 big losses, but they've earned big money from 2 players who you could almost describe as kind of one-season wonders for Bournemouth. And I think left-back has already been sold because they've added Adrien Truffert from Rennes. He was one of the best Ligue 1's standout left-backs last season. So he should slot in nicely. And going forward, I don't think there's anything really to worry about because Evan Nilsson had a very solid debut season despite having a few injury issues. Kluivert and Semenyo have come on leaps and bounds under Iraola's watch. And this is a team who finished 6th on expected points by my ratings, which shows they were a force to be reckoned with last season. I don't think we should sleep on them just because they've sold 2 of the better players. As I say, I think one's been very capably addressed. Perhaps they do need another centre-half, but they've got the money in the bank now. They can and probably will do some business before the end of August. I wouldn't be sleeping on Bournemouth at all.
Okay, so that's Brighton and Bournemouth in the top 6 market on Matchbook. We're going to move on to the relegation battle here, and this could be a bit more fascinating than it has been in the last couple of seasons. Mark, we'll go through the prices here now in a second. So we currently have, for the relegation, I think we'll have the top 3 or the top 3 from last season, the Championship, i.e. the 3 that got promoted in Burnley, Sunderland and Leeds United leading this market here. So you can see currently Burnley are 1.33 to get relegated. Sunderland are 144. And we have Leeds United at 234, the likes of Wolves 385, Brentford 4.0, some bigger prices. And I know you're going to take a swing at a couple of those bigger prices, Mark. But maybe let's go with the promoted side. You've got Leeds United, probably the best chance of the 3 is staying up, as the odds suggest. You've got Burnley, sold their goalkeeper there in the last week. You're not a fan of Scott Parker. You probably think that's nailed on 133 shot. And you have Sunderland, who had no chance in my book. And suddenly they've got Granit Xhaka, leader for Arsenal the last few seasons before he went to Leverkusen and won the league. Obviously not a fan of Ten Hag if he's going to Weir side. So a lot going on in that top 3, I would say. And it's important to note we're recording this just at the very end of July, 31st of July. So there may be 1 or 2 transfers either way with those 3 sides.
Yeah, I'll just set the scene a little bit before I kind of cover the promoted teams, because recency bias suggests that you should be backing all 3 promoted teams to go back down. It's happened the last 2 seasons. But it's easy to forget that 3 seasons ago, all 3 promoted clubs stayed up. So whilst I sort of tipped and backed all 3 promoted clubs to go immediately back down last season, I wouldn't be blindly backing it to happen again. I think we need to judge each team on their own merits. And if you look at the Premier League, you can sort of average out certain points tallies, goals tallies, win tallies to see what you probably need to do to survive in this league. And the average points total of a team finishing 17th is about 38. The average points tally of a team finishing 18th is around about 35. So you're saying 35 to 38 points should get you safe or very close to it. Again, history says win 10 games, you'll be fine. Similarly, score over 50 goals, you should be fine. So looking at those numbers immediately, I have to cast big doubts over both Burnley and Sunderland. Can those two teams reach those levels? I'm not sure. Burnley, yeah, they exceeded all expectations last season. My own expectations, I should say. Credit to Scott Parker. They were the first team in history to win 100 points and not win the league, only lost twice. Everyone knows about that extraordinary defensive record, but it's worth highlighting. They conceded 16 goals. Their expected goals against figure was 40. That's a 24-goal differential, which is absolutely enormous. And a big piece of that puzzle was James Trafford, who, as you say, has now left the building. So Parker is quite pragmatic. So a side who scored just 69 goals in the Championship, 26 fewer than Leeds, only sort of 19 more than Premier League targets. Are they going to be capable of doing that when their top goal scorer and captain, Josh Brownhill, who got 18 of those, looks to be leaving, has not signed a new deal, assessing his options elsewhere? I don't think they've done enough to address those issues. So I've got big doubts over them and Parker personally. And Sunderland, just a very young, inexperienced team, probably a year too soon, I think. Enzo Lefebvre was the only player in their playoff final winning team who had any top flight experience. They've obviously gone out to try and change their tact from that youthful exuberance to more sort of hardened experience, as you say, with Granit Xhaka, Habib Diarra. I think will bulk out their midfield as well. Good additions, Reynaldo, Adingra. But they still look pretty short on experience and top flight quality. They were the lowest scorers in the top 6 of the Championship, 58 goals. That was 2 fewer than Sheffield Wednesday in 12th. They went up with the second lowest expected points tally of a promoted club in the last 5 years. And interestingly, Nottingham Forest went up with the third lowest XP when they did, and they had to spend about £130 million and only sort of scrape survival in their first season back. So both teams were just a million miles away from Leeds in almost every metric. And as for Sunderland too, it's worth noting they could have around 7 players going off to AFCON around wintertime too. So looking at their squad, I think they'll be brave. I think they'll have moments of quality, but ultimately probably fall short. Similar really to Ipswich perhaps last season. I don't think there'll be a I don't think there'll be a Southampton by any stretch, but probably just a step too far for them.
Okay, reporting on AFCON, it's December, isn't it, this year? It's going to be potentially more games and the likes of Salah and a few others. Important to note, that's something we didn't mention at the top of the show. So we Burnley 133, Sunderland 144, more than likely going down. Leaves us just one relegation spot here, Mark, all things being equal. Leeds 234, Wolves 385, Brentford 4.0. Those 3 sides from the top up in terms of, do you think they're all potential safe, or were they worth a bet relegation-wise?
I think almost every team is on the table here for relegation, up to about probably Crystal Palace and Fulham. I think everyone else is in danger. Leeds, I think, are best left alone. They were the highest rated Championship side we've seen now since Wolves won the division, blitzing sort of the 100 points, scoring 95 goals, plus 65 goal difference, domination in both boxes. They've upgraded the goalkeeper, which was massively overdue, made some astute signings, steady signings. I think they're definitely the top promoted club bet if you want to go into that market. But I think they've got a decent shot of survival, even if I have reservations on Daniel Farke. But outside of that, Brentford are the obvious team to look towards. I think everyone's concerned about them. Thomas Frank gone, captain gone, best player and creator gone, probably their best striker going as well. Rookie head coach. And the team's undeniably gotten worse, bar maybe the goalkeeper, where there's been an upgrade in Kelleher. But feels like a big gamble. And the reason why I'm not going to put Brentford up is because the head honcho there, the owner, Matthew Benham, he's a hugely successful gambler. That's how he's earned his money. And I don't want to oppose him and what he's doing there, because he's been so incredibly successful with Brentford. Why would it stop now? But this does feel like a big gamble, and it would not surprise anyone, I think, if they're sucked into it. I
Yeah,
think
but
West
just
Ham are
before we
interesting.
move
Go on.
before
Yeah.
we move on to Brentford, off Brentford, they've been putting a lot of stuff on their YouTube channel. Keith Andrews, the star of the show there, is trying to build a good atmosphere. So I just presumed you'd caught an hour or two of that behind the scenes, and you're happy to leave them alone off the basis of that, Mark, because good stuff coming out from Brentford. But they're definitely an open book, and it's Keith Andrew. I can't decide if he's a really good people person and a manager, or it's sliding towards David Brent. It's somewhere in the middle, and hopefully he can get his stuff done for, because in Ireland it's quite exciting to have an Irish former Irish player, an Irish person managing a Premier League side. It sort of caught us all off guard in the summer.
Yeah, 100%. I remember hearing his name mooted at the beginning, and I thought that's unlikely. He's done a great job in terms of the set pieces there, but it's an enormous step up, isn't it, into the main hot seat. But they did it previously with Thomas Frank, but he had previous head coach experience. So yeah, the jury has to be out. I do feel like it's a gamble, but Matthew Benham, he normally wins his gambles, so I'm not going to sort of oppose them at this stage, but let's just say if it comes around to May time and Brentford are relegated, I don't think anyone's going to be hugely surprised by that either.
No, and as the absentees, as you mentioned, 3-1 currently get relegated 4.0. So yeah, so take it away with your two selections. We can see them bottom of the screen: West Ham and Nottingham Forest. So your two selections here. So we'll start with Graham Potter's West Ham. It does feel like that should have been a good fit, and didn't seem like it the second half of the season. It's a big preseason for them.
Very big. They looked really, really cloggy in that second half of the season. 6th favourites now, Matchbook, to be relegated. I think that is quite kind on them. They had their own gamble last season, replacing David Moyes with Lopetegui for the whole sort of stylistic shift. We said at the time, if you're sort of trying to move to a more progressive style and go from Moyes to Lopetegui, you've got the wrong man. I liked Lopetegui, but it just didn't work out there at all. And yeah, supporters haven't been happy at all, really, for quite some time. There's a horrible mood around the club, and Graham Potter's not been able to lift that sort of cloud either, with his own playing style, his own sort of personality either. And it just feels like problems are brewing there. There's a huge over-reliance on Jared Bowen. Potter only won 5 of his 18 games in charge. The team only won 5 times at the London Stadium all season. That figure has to improve massively if they want to be safe and comfortable. I just look at the squad. It lacks mobility. It lacks freshness. It lacks impetus. You've lost Kudus. Fulkrug is injury prone. Mikel Antonio, I'm not sure on what the latest is there, but they needed to look for a replacement for him probably 2 seasons ago. Anyhow, his influence had waned. The team just looks older, slower, and almost worse in both boxes than the side that Moyes left behind. And sure, I'm not sort of suggesting if Potter doesn't work out and the fans continue to grow with discontent, then they won't make a change before Christmas. And we've seen many teams down the bottom make changes for the better. Wolves being the obvious example last season, but it just feels like there's a very sort of ugly mood around the club right now, and it wouldn't be a huge surprise to see them sort of drop out.
That's the first selection. And second selection is Nottingham Forest. People will be surprised to see this. Obviously, did unbelievable. Was Leicester City vibes at the time. At one point, they were a very short price, a lot shorter than people might remember, to win the Premier League title, just given Liverpool and Arsenal were struggling at the time. Obviously, Liverpool kicked on, managed to keep Morgan Gibbs White. So why is this a relegation fight? It's going to be a serious fall from grace, Mark. I take it you're probably looking at it from 2 seasons ago, or last season, sorry, and what price they were to get relegated maybe versus this season.
A little bit, yeah. 12 months ago, they were 4 favourites to be relegated, so the most likely outside of the promoted teams to be relegated. They enjoyed an absolutely incredible campaign, and it would require a big amount of sort of regression to see them sucked back into the bottom 3. But this is a price play. I think they're a big price, and for a number of reasons, really, actually. A lot of what they did last season felt slightly unsustainable, and I wonder if there is drop-offs in any of the sort of key metrics or areas which I'm going to outline in a minute, then they could be easily in trouble. They were third in late April, and they ended 7th after losing 4 of the last 8. So they still are in Europe, which is a big plus for supporters, but it's not the Champions League, which is what they hoped, they almost expected at some point towards the end of the campaign. They'd been there or thereabouts for the whole season, fell out, and you just wonder, will there be a fallout from that? Will fans, the owner in particular, be slightly not as optimistic or not as excited for the new season, knowing they're not playing Champions League football? They do have to now deal with a Thursday, Sunday slog as well. That's something Forest are not accustomed to, and it will it will hurt. Alanga's gone. It sounds like Gibbs White hasn't gone, but wants out, or at least was looking that way. So yeah, in terms of what I felt is unsustainable. They scored 17 goals from set pieces last season. Wouldn't require a huge amount of regression there to sort of chalk a few of those wins into draws and draws into defeats. Their record for scoring first was, I felt, unsustainable. Score first, they're able to settle back into their game plan. It worked a treat so often. Have they been found out? Potentially in that last third of the campaign, who knows? Their record when chasing games was really, really poor. So you could see if they do sort of struggle to score the opening goal, perhaps there's more evidence that they could struggle. Similarly, you had Chris Wood scoring 30% of his overall shots. That's not sustainable. A goalkeeper with the highest save percentage in the league, again, not really sustainable. Then you've also got potentially 6 players going off to AFCON. Last season, they only used 23 players, 13 of them made 31 appearances or more in the Premier League, which either suggested a reluctance to rotate or even the fact that they don't have enough or good alternatives. So the squad doesn't appear stronger than last season. You're going to be sort of fighting on both fronts now. And, you've got a lunatic owner in charge there. It wouldn't be a huge surprise to see him fall out with Nuno early doors. Nuno leaves, things start to spiral. I can see it happening. I think the likelihood of that happening is bigger than the price they are to be relegated. The issue with both West Ham and Forest, in any side in the relegation market, is, in my opinion, you're probably looking at just one available slot outside of Burnley and Sunderland. So that's why I've gone for sort of bigger prices than what's already there. But yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Forest struggle. Do I think they'll be relegated? Probably not, but I do think the likelihood is more than the price suggests.
Okay, so we've got 2 swings at the top 6 market and 2 swings in the relegation market for Mark. So Mark looking at a lot of prices, definitely more than it has been in previous season in terms of bigger prices, taking a few swings. Insights.matchbook.com, full recap of all the outright bets will be available from around Friday and throughout leading up to the Premier League season kicking off. We'll move on to the Championship outright. And fascinating market here, Mark, and competitive as always, at least at the start of the season. We'll check the price that we currently have on Matchbook.com. So this is the Championship market, which kicks off next weekend. So not this weekend coming, August the 8th at 8 p.m. is when the market shuts down there. You can see on outright, Ipswich 4.3, Southampton 6.6, Birmingham around 8.2, Sheffield United 9.2, 12.5, and bigger prices the rest. Mark, maybe just briefly touch on the other 2 Premier League relegated clubs before making your selection. It's noticeable how short that Ipswich and Southampton are, yet Leicester City are down there at around 17, 18.0.
Yeah, Leicester are that price because of the possible incoming points penalty they will incur from the EFL. The talk seems to be potentially 9 points, and that's not hugely damaging, but it's enough to sort of put you off backing them in an outright market where I think you've got 2 strong sides at the top end. We've seen in the past relegated clubs do tend to fare well. 5 of the last 6 favourites have won the Championship title. 6 of the last 12 automatically promoted teams were in the first year of parachute payments. 4 more were in the second year of theirs. So that's just 2 of the last 12 automatically promoted teams, not in the first or second year of parachute payments. So it shows relegated sides do need to be considered. And Southampton, of course, are one of the main front runners. If you look at the squad, it's a little bit all over the place, but there are sort of really strong Championship performers, contenders there to suggest that they should be okay. It just feels like a bit more of a risky play to back Saints. Will Steele was appointed at the end of the campaign, I think on the last day of the season, wasn't it? And comes with a very good reputation from French football. Obviously has the dual language there. And I think he will be a positive for Saints. And I do think they'll be there or thereabouts at least. But Leicester, that points penalty, Marty Cifuentes going in there too. Still got a number of sort of high caliber players, but it's not the same squad that was relegated 2 seasons ago and sort of blitzed the Championship. Jamie Vardy, of course, going, and seems to be a lack of leadership there. And I think Cifuentes has got a reasonably big job actually to turn things around and make them top 2 candidates. Top 6 looks more likely with that points penalty.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at your selection, which is the favourites. Ipswich 4.3 or in and around that. Importantly, they've held on to Kieran McKenna. That's a big coup considering he was probably gone this time last year or very close to it, and now he's going to try and lead them back into the Premier League.
Yeah, it's interesting how sort of opinions change, isn't it? Because he was touted by Chelsea and others 12 months ago, stayed at Ipswich, committed to Ipswich, and they were relegated, which wasn't a massive surprise, was it? After back-to-back promotions with the squad they had, but for some reason or other, his stock seems to have fallen. When I think this season will sort of show us if he is the real deal, because he will be able to turn around a sinking ship. Because for me, it's a boring selection, but I do think they're worthy favourites over the rest. Short enough price, not something to get massively excited about. It certainly isn't my best bet of the anti-post coupon by any stretch, but yeah, I just think there's less doubt about them compared to Southampton or any of the chasing pack. They are the fair favourites in my eyes. Less noise, less question marks. Yeah, back-to-back promotions, but what they did last summer was almost go out and sign players with an eye on this season. They privately would have presumed they'll probably be relegated. They were building on strong foundations, stable foundations. Sam Morsey, Liam Dunlap, both gone, but only probably the two main sort of significant departures. Outside of that, they've got a squad of about 20 really top-end championship players, cover almost for every position, plus cash to spend with that parachute payments and cash in the bank. So there's continuity there with McKenna as well. There's quite a lot I like about a team when I'm looking for them to go well. Yeah, super strong squad, continuity, motivation, and a squad there with players who have played this level for more often, obviously majority of their careers, but believe that they're good enough to potentially to make the step up again. So look, Sammy Schmodix, Jack Clark, two players who could easily be top goal scorer in this division if they get it going. I think they've got enough in all areas to be the team to beat.
Okay, it's important to know you're not putting up favourites at least shorter prices in the other two leagues, so maybe that's a tip in itself and how confident you are in Ipswich. Kieran McKenna must look at Chelsea and Bayern Munich, think I should be managing one of the two of those clubs, all things being equal. You know, between Maresca getting the Chelsea job and Company getting the Bayern job, you know, with the same template as Ipswich, Kieran McKenna, he must be so motivated to get this done in record points totals and that sort of thing. And maybe it might look like a big price come the end of the season.
Yeah. The way you framed it there is it's absolutely right. You know, if my memory serves me right, McKenna almost rejected Chelsea's advances last summer, isn't he, to sort of commit his future to Ipswich, which was incredible. Showed incredible confidence on his part, but maybe he looked at Chelsea as a bit of a basket case after what they had done with previous coaches in previous years and felt his progression was better suited in Suffolk. But yeah, you mentioned Vincent Kompany and Bayern Munich. It's just funny how his stock has kind of fallen because Ipswich were relegated, which is kind of what everyone expected to happen last season anyway. So why should his stock fall? Sure, their data wasn't particularly impressive, but I thought they gave it a much better shot at survival than the other two teams. They were more competitive with the eye test, at least in most of their matches, and played some decent football too. So we'll see where we go. I don't think they'll be hitting the sort of century points mark or anything like that, but I do think they are the sort of team to beat.
Okay, let's move on to English League One outright. And before we get to your selection, we've got a team similarly priced to Ipswich in the Championship versus in League One. Luton Town have got relegated League One. Same chance of going back up according to the market. Why do you feel that's wrong, or why are you looking elsewhere from Luton Town in the League One market?
It's a good question. I could easily have put Luton up, but it'd be pretty boring, wouldn't it? Putting these short price favourites up. League One is a much weaker league this season than it was last year, where you had Birmingham and Wrexham really sort of flexing their financial power. Birmingham, the best team to ever play at this level, records falling all over the place, and Luton might feel that they've got the ability within that squad to sort of match those efforts really after back-to-back relegations. Of course, they're the clear deserving favourites, the team to beat. Of course, I expect them to win the division if all goes well. They've got parachute payments in League One, which is a rarity. And they're not exactly a club in crisis either. You think of teams who have done similar in the past. Sunderland went down, struggled to get back out of it, but they were a real mess of a club. And Wolves were too when they suffered it, but they still managed to turn it around and win the league quite convincingly too. So there's no reason why Luton can't do it with the squad and financial power that they have available to them. They finished the season pretty well under Matt Bloomfield. The metrics never really suggested they were going to be a bottom three team. But price-wise, Luton are the same price as Birmingham were at this stage of last season. And that's the reason I'm going to look elsewhere, because Luton won't hit 100 points. Birmingham almost seemed destined to do it from the start with the squad and spending and the ambition they showed. Luton have that ability, but they have lost considerably, and so they have lost consistently now for 2 seasons. So there is that element of doubt. I think with Birmingham, there was a large portion of my of myself. It was very, very confident Birmingham are going to go very, very well. I couldn't see many negatives, but that's the one thing against Luton. So I think there perhaps is an opportunity to go against them and find a bigger price, a better price to cheer on.
Okay, so say you start with that. I'm guessing you started like that, the way you spoken when looking at this market when you sat down a week or two ago, Mark. How long does it take then to settle on your selection? Did you just go through going, I like the sound of them, I'll have a good look at them, or is it like just ruling teams out one by one at the current prices because you like Stockport County here?
Yeah, it's a pros and cons thing versus the price, and Huddersfield have to be mentioned and respected heavily. They've done some really, really good business this summer. Alfie May almost they signed in the week is almost a cheat code for promotion. He seems to sort of lead the line and score plenty of goals for the last 3 or 4 promoted clubs in this division. Yeah, they're already heavily respected in the market. So I wanted a team who weren't being as respected as I do in the market, and that is Stockport. For me, they're the value play. I finished 3rd last season behind both Birmingham and Wrexham, a much more difficult league than it is this year. And they ran Wrexham very, very well and very close to the end. Obviously lost out in the playoffs. But yeah, Stockport and Dave Challoner, you've got just a head coach and a club who are both on the same hymn sheet. They are both incredibly progressive. They've almost guaranteed year-on-year progression and almost promotion as well. He's refreshed his squad a little bit since the summer. Some big name departures, some stalwarts have gone, but the players coming in all arrive with big, big reputations. And yesterday's signing of Nathan Lowe on loan from Stoke is a really, really exciting capture. In forward areas, they are rock solid at home. They're difficult to beat. They score goals. They have that element of continuity and a squad that I think has grown stronger than last season. So they have upgraded in certain areas, and if they can avoid a playoff hangover, they will be amongst the top 6. And I just don't feel they're getting the same respect from the market, who, understandably so. You can see little Stockport alongside Luton, Bolton, Cardiff, Plymouth, Huddersfield. You can understand why they're not quite as big a club as those teams, but they have got the financial firepower, and I think the system, the structure behind them, which just makes them a little bit more reliable than perhaps, let's say, at Huddersfield, who do have a bit of a rookie coach in Lee Grant taking charge. Obviously spent and splashed the cash, but that's a question mark. Can he translate his promise as a coach into a sort of number one? Cardiff and Plymouth, I think, could be anything, but more likely to be outside of the top 2 equation. Bolton, an interesting one. So Stockport stood out to me as a team who were very, very strong and could get stronger.
Okay, let's move on to League 2. So MK Dons, it's a very similar team. Looking at this morning before we came on. So MK Dons are the 4.0 favourites. So we will start with them, Mark. But you are going to look away again. So Championship, you were happy to take the price in Ipswich. League 1, you went against them and went for a bigger price. Here, it seems a 2-tier and then the rest. So you've got MK Dons at 4.0 and Chesterfield 7.8, 8.0. Second favourites 15.0 and bigger the rest. Is it just between the top 2 for you and you had to pick which one was the value play?
No, not at all. I think it's the beauty of League 2 is it's always such an open market. There's a number of teams who have good, solid claims, and there'll always be a couple of surprises too. But yeah, MK Dons are the super strong favourites, deserve to be favourites, but do they deserve to be the price they are? Probably not. There's doubts again about them. They have had an enormous gamble. They were 10-1 at the start of the summer. As you say, they're 3.5, 4.0 in places now. They have appointed their promotion specialist, Paul Warne, came in at the back end of last season, have recruited some seriously good players for this level on top of what is already a really, really strong squad. The reason I'm not backing them, I think the price has gone far too short now. And they're also overhauling their approach. The MK Dons way is progressive passing and possession. Paul Warne isn't really that guy. He's quite happy to go direct, quite happy to be all about sort of strength and conditioning and fitness. And, he's got many strings to his bow, but he's very different to his kind of predecessors there. And the last 8 favourites in League 2 have been beaten. So I'm not really keen on taking them at that price. I do expect them to be in the top 2, absolutely, but I'm just not willing to tie my money up at that price with those doubts. I'll come on to the team who I am backing in a second, but there's a number of sides. I think if you look towards the top end of the market, Barnet are the one at a big price, who seem to be massively underrated, having won the National League title at a canter last season. Chesterfield won the National League 2 seasons ago and came into League Two last season as favourites to win the league. So why aren't Barnet being respected in the same way? Yes, they could be considered little old Barnet, but that's a team that's been really well put together, will score goals, will bloody noses, and will be there or thereabouts in the top 7 and could easily play above their odds. Bristol Rovers, a strong team, have come down from League One, should never really have been promoted, will be there or thereabouts. Colchester, a very progressive team under the Cowleys too. So there's a number of teams I like to go well. A few bigger teams who perhaps will drop off a little bit, but the side I've chosen there are Chesterfield. As I said, were favourites this time last year after just coming out of the National League. They finished 7th, lost out in the playoffs. But their season was massively kind of derailed by injuries during the winter. At one point, they had about a dozen players missing for a few weeks because of injuries. So I think better luck with injuries should see them improve. They've got a squad stacked with experience, quality, some really nice additions as well to freshen up the squad. The continuity I talk about with all these teams, with Paul Cook, who knows how to get promoted as well. Settled squad. I think there's all the ingredients there to go very, very well. And I think at almost double the price of MK Dons, they are the more appealing bet than backing the Dons, even though I think both teams are the strongest in the division outside of Bristol Rovers.
Okay, can we add in Barnet then for a League Two selection for you? Would you? Yeah, you seem happy enough with that.
If there's each way, if there's each way possibilities, then absolutely. But the better price of Barnet is definitely a top 7. There was some 3.0 hanging around there, so you get an extra place compared to the other EFL leagues in terms of playoffs, top 7. So they should not be hovering at 2-1 or bigger for the top 7. But absolutely, if there's each way about, you get played top place money for the top 3. Expect Barnet to go very well. They are massively underrated.
We'll pull out Chesterfield as the main selection. If you want to do back to lay on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, Barnet around 19-20.0 now, and see maybe where you're set your money at Christmas time. But they're the 3 selections for Mark for each of the top 3. So we're backing the favourites in the Championship at Ipswich. We're going against the Favs. I'm going with Stockport County in League One and Chesterfield at League Two, and also shout out to Barnet there as well. Top goal scorer match market currently available on Matchbook. I'll just read out the first few prices. I have them in front of me. Erling Haaland around 2.8. Victor Gyökeres 7.0. Alexander Isak, where will he be playing? 7.6. Mo Salah 8.8. We're looking at around 24.0 and bigger prices the rest. Mark, we have a selection here at a 230.0. If for someone who wants to do those back to lay options, and you might talk a little bit about that before putting up this selection, at a player that might just get off to a great start and, come November, December is perhaps a 9-10.0 shot. You can decide what you want to do there. But talk a little bit about that before giving us your selection here. And eagle-eyed listeners, even though that's the wrong term, would have probably picked up on this when you were talking about the team this player plays for earlier on.
Yeah, so the back to lay option is a beauty really for these kind of prices, these kind of markets, because effectively you back the player or the team at the big price, and if they start well, they start going very, very well, their price will contract, and there's the opportunity then on the exchange to trade out of your position and almost guarantee profit with the difference. So it's a lovely way to play it. But my selection, I do believe, has real claims of being in the place money at the end of the season. He might not win it, but I think he will be there or thereabouts, and therefore the odds of 230 or whatever it was you mentioned, I thought he'd be 100-1 at best. So clearly the advantages of playing the exchange here come with backing Evan Ilson to be the top Premier League goal scorer. Now, not for a second do I think he will be the top Premier League goal scorer, but I do think he can challenge the sort of top 3, top 4, who, of course, you expect Haaland to be there. You expect Isak to be there wherever he's playing. Salah has AFCON to contend with, which could damage his output. Also, we saw a bit of a downturn in his output in the second half of last season. Perhaps he slowed down because the title was done. Who knows? But Evan Ilson, I thought had a great debut season in the Premier League. 10 goals from 28 starts. I think that commands respect. He did suffer injuries. If he can stay fit, he will be the main man here. I think there's a lot to go in his favour. Bournemouth have no European commitments. He doesn't have AFCON to contend with, probably no international appearances either, so he won't be going out to Brazil in the international breaks. He'll be rested, refreshed. And yeah, there doesn't seem to be major competition in the Bournemouth team for that starting striker berth. He'll be assisted, of course, by Clivert, Semenyo, probably Utara as well. The negative is he's not on penalties, but I think he showed enough in that season last year to suggest he's capable of adding another 5, 6, possibly 7 goals to be considered a real sort of long shot here with potential to get paid. 17 is normally what you're required to get place money in the top 4 for the Premier League. So if he can hit sort of 15 or more, that price will hugely contract. There'll be an opportunity to get out of your position and guarantee profit. We know how Bournemouth play. They'll attack, they'll be aggressive, they'll create chances. Some of their finest performances have come when they've been really aggressive and attacking. And I think Evan-Nielsen showed at the back end of last season he can finish 7 goals in his last 12 games to win the campaign. Shows his quality. Playing for a side I expect to go well, challenge the top half in particular, possibly better with no European commitments. I think there's a lot to like about him.
Okay, great case for Evan-Nielsen. And we'll have a quick look at the top goal scorer market, just at some of the bigger prices for anyone that likes the case that Mark laid out, but maybe wants to pick someone else. I mean, if you look at the big prices, I mean, Bukayo Saka there at 70.0, Cunha, you think he's going to get going, 95.0, Liam Delap, the same price. We've got Mbeumo at 120, Mateta 150.0, got Eze 290.0, could be interesting if he gets his big move to Arsenal. Chris Wood 210.0. So it is the beauty, Mark, of playing those back to lay options if we just scroll through some of those prices. But yeah, for you, would you take a swing at 1 or 2 on the exchange, those sort of prices? Because I mean, Evan-Nielsen is almost opened my eyes to, if you just get someone off to a hot start, you could be sitting on a 20.0 shot when you backed him at 10 times the price,
Yeah, I think you want to be looking for a similar type of profile to Evan-Nielsen. A player who will play regularly, leading the line without a huge amount of competition. Ideally, you don't want European commitments, but I understand that's not easy when you've got so many Premier League teams in Europe this year. But yeah, Mateta was another one I looked and considered. But Palace have got the Thursday, Sunday slot. You just don't know how serious or not these teams are going to take European football. You'd hope they take it seriously because of the supporters not being involved in European football for so long, but that's obviously going to damage their team on a weekend Premier League fixture if they are going hard at Europe as well. So I just thought Evan-Nielsen was the more reliable option there. But yeah, Delap was a big price too, but the issue there is rotation and the amount of options that they have in their armoury and forward areas. So yeah, that's the way I kind of look at it. A player who's going to play regularly, be the main man. Ideally, you want penalties. I know Evan-Nielsen hasn't got that either, but yeah, you're looking for sort of 10 to 15 goals to sort of trouble that sort of top end of the market and see a price collapse.
Okay, excellent. And Mark, now we want to get this in under the hour, so keep it very brief because we've covered this bet already. But if you were to have one outright bet that we've covered in the last just under an hour, who is it going to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I've gone here for is the price I think is most wrong, if that's the right terminology to promote here. So yeah, I'm almost going to surprise myself actually, because I don't think Nottingham Forest will get relegated, but I think at the price, you have to consider them a big runner actually. I just think the price is too big for Forest to suffer that relegation and regression really from last season, which was quite incredible. You've got an owner who could do something absolutely ridiculous from one day to the next, and that could easily blow up in the side's face. You've got players off for AFCON, you've got European commitments, you've got severe overperformance in a huge number of metrics from last season, which only requires a little bit of regression in either or all of those areas to see them sort of tumble down the division. And I think you've got big teams who struggled last season, the likes of Spurs, Manchester United. They aren't going to be as bad as they were last season. So suddenly that bottom end is going to be a little bit more compact, and the likes of Forest could see a big drop off. I just don't see what they did last season as sustainable in either box. And I think a price close to 10 to 1 or around that sort of mark is too big to ignore, really. So there will be my best bet.
You are going to get absolutely battered on social media when that makes its way out and gets leaked from the Matchbook podcast, Mark. I remember Wolves fans came at you a few years ago. You weren't a million miles away. Yeah,
bring it on.
It's all part of the fun, and Villa came for us last season throughout the season. But look, we welcome all fans and all supporters, and we welcome all opinions. Hit the comments with your thoughts on Mark's bets throughout there, and we'll be back Wednesday before the Premier League season with Mark and Adrian for a full preview of game week 1. Insights.matchbook.com, full recap. You can see pod 50. Don't forget to enter the bonus codes champions as well if you want the outright bet. But we will chat to you in a couple of weeks on the Wednesday. Bye-bye.